I grew up in Texas, Katy, Texas, but I was actually born in Israel, which is an interesting thing, which is, it goes a lot into my story about who I am.
Your biological parents moved to Texas, or?
No, my biological parents are both dead. I never really knew them. I maybe got to know them for about 2-3 weeks of my life, but I never really got to know who they were. I spent my growing up in a foster home that was actually run by Palestinians, and my parents were actually both Jewish, and they were actually both soldiers in the Israeli military. So the fact that I was born and brought into a Palestinian foster home, as some of you know, it's controversy whether they're allies or not. Right now they're at war, and basically I was an enemy of theirs from the time I stepped into that foster home, which is really weird. There was a lot of hatred brought onto me from the fact that my parents were Jewish. I don't know how I ended up coming to there or how I ended up in the hands of those people. I just know that the company that they were owning, the foster care, was illegal, and it was more of a torture center. It was more of a form of therapy for them to basically abuse children, and it was something that really wasn't talked about. But I, since I was little, faced a lot of abuse from the fact that my parents were Jewish. It's something that has taken a lot out of me to be able to. I'm ashamed of a lot of my life of the fact that I'm Jewish, and I'm constantly dyeing hair and trying to change that because it's something I should be proud of, but in deep core from my childhood, I've been abused for it. So is it okay if I talk about some of the...
Sure.
Okay, so one of the main things that they would do is they would shove my face into counters and hit me in the nose. And I have a broken nose here, and I have a mark on my nose permanently. They would call me a Jew, Jewish, B-I-T-C-H, a bitch. They would slam my nose in counters, slam my hands. They would say, "Oh, you're chosen," and they would make me choose out of boxes, and whatever box that they would choose, they would put in every, they would hit me with whatever object was in there. And I faced so much fear from this. It's like, it's hard for me to talk about this, but I'm not scared to talk about it anymore. But I was there till I was about 4 years old, and what had happened was they
You remember it?
Yeah, I remember the torture. I remember, and
Because 4 years old is pretty young.
Yeah. The torture was so severe. I mean, what had happened was I'd basically blocked myself out of remembering it through something they called dissociative disorder. But upon a therapy lesson and upon talking to God a lot, he unveiled a lot of truth to me about these things, and it made sense about why my whole life I felt weird or different. And I just never was normal is a term that I deal with a lot, and trying to fit into that box. That's why LA has been so freeing for me, kind of, because it can be cool to be different here, and it kind of can be embraced.
Everything's accepted here.
Yeah. Basically, I ended up getting saved from that foster care by the Israeli embassy, literally, and they came in the form of just being friends of the Palestinians. They came in the form of Palestinians' interest in prospering the foster home, but what it really was them shutting it down, and they ended up saving me from that foster home. And they ended up putting me immediately, this was upon 4 years of my constant abuse. I mean, bad. I mean, they beat me. I was not even sent to the hospital. I was just left to bleed there. I mean, I have severe wounds still on my body, on my legs, and things from this. But they ended up saving me, the Israeli embassy, and they put me immediately on a plane when I was 4 years old. And I remember going on the plane, and this woman, she was pretending to be my mother, saying, "Honey, don't worry, I'm gonna be there when you get to the other side." She wasn't there, so it was a trip, but I just remember being on the airplane alone, And there was this girl next to me, this little black African-American girl, and she was drawing G's, I guess thinking of God, and I just remember saying, you draw your G's differently than me. She drew hers with the left hand and mine with the right, and that's just the only memory I have on the plane. I came in and somehow I popped up in Universal Studios, and I was there waiting, and there was a blue-eyed, black-haired man, my father, waiting there for me.
Soft White Underbelly is about giving people a space to tell their stories, even when these stories challenge what we think we know. Ground News shows us different perspectives in the media, which is why Ground News is a perfect sponsor for my channel. In a world where algorithms censor much of the information we receive, some of the most important stories get missed from our news feeds. Ground News highlights local news from around the world, giving you an on-the-ground perspective that national coverage might miss. The app and website empowers you to form your own opinions by presenting you with every article published on any news story worldwide. My favorite part of the app is the data it gives you on each news source as you read it, such as where it leans on the political spectrum, a factuality rating indicating how subjective their printed reporting tends to be, and who funds it. I particularly like their blind spot feed, dedicated to showing you news stories that are underrepresented in the mainstream media. You can check this all out by scanning the QR code on screen or clicking the link below. It's easy to forget how much bias can shape the reality we live in. And in a world where our attention is constantly being fought over, my Vantage Plan easily helps me keep up with more important stories slipping through the cracks. So I encourage you to check them out at ground.news/SWU. Subscribe through my link or download the mobile app and enter promo code SWU to save 40% off their Vantage Plan. And by subscribing or even gifting it to someone you know, you're helping hold the media accountable and helping my channel directly. Thank you for watching.
And I just remember being excited but confused. I was so excited to leave there, but I didn't know what a father was or what it was supposed to be. And that stems into why I still struggle today. And I am glad to get this opportunity, because one of my dreams in life is I want to do some therapy, or I want to open a home for women who have abuse from their childhood or incest or problems with their father, because they can all be healed when you find out your true father is God. And that's all. I leave at that.
When did you go to Texas?
I was in Texas. I went there. I was Katy, Texas. I was 4 years old. And the father that I had there, ironically, it was a little strange.
So the guy who picked you up?
Yes, my new father.
He took you to Texas?
Yeah. Well, no, I flew into Texas.
Yes, I thought you said you were at Universal Studios.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, in Florida. Yeah, that's right. Sorry, my memory. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In Florida.
In Florida.
And then we moved to Texas.
Got it.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I came through Universal Studios in Florida. Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, we went to Texas through there. My home was in Texas.
Got it.
Yeah.
And how was your life once you were settled in Texas?
Okay, so this is where it becomes a little more confusing for me, but it might be kind of like hard for people to hear. If anyone has heard of, childhood sexual abuse, just to warn you, pre-warning, this is something that falls into that. It can be graphic. Basically, when I got to Texas, my mother that had chosen to adopt me, because it was really her, and it turns out that the man that came to pick me up was actually just one of her boyfriends, and it wasn't he didn't really have any interest in making me his daughter or adopting me or anything of the sort. So basically, when I got there, my mother, dressed me up and got me all nice and pretty, just jewelry and really looking like a little princess. And then she basically said, oh, I have to go to work, and left. And the weird thing was, I had a vibe off the bat not to really trust her. But because I was little and I didn't really know what to do, I just sat there and I just waited. And, he showed me a movie. It was The Little Mermaid. And I associate that movie with the fact that it was a mermaid would be my face, later on, the tears that would fall when I would talk about this later on, that it would later be tears of joy. But basically, he took me in the room and he sat me down and kind of like a brainwashing, said, "This is what you are." And he took my clothes off and he, touched me here, and turned around and he said, "This is what you are. This is what you're here for. You are nothing else with this. You are a sex object. You are a sex object for all men. You are a sex object," which later I would come to kind of have a psychological thing where I would agree with him. But at this point in my life, I was scared, but I was like, okay, maybe this makes sense. Maybe this is why, I kind of was falling into it.
And this guy was who? He was
just a random man. I mean, I would say his name was Gene, honestly.
But he was a friend of the woman who adopted you?
Yeah, he was basically her boyfriend.
Okay.
Yeah, he was her lover. Or
But a different guy than the guy who picked you up in Florida.
No, this was the same man.
Oh, same guy. Okay.
Same man.
Got it.
Same man. Yeah.
Okay.
And when he came looking like the all-American dad. He had like a E.T. doll and everything, and that's why E.T. traumatized me my whole life, that movie, because of this whole thing. And it's a trip because I just watched it recently and I died laughing at E.T. And, E.T. was kind of scary, but E.T. also had healing powers, and he had all those kinds of things that would remind us of our, God. But basically the man, he sexually abused me bad. He said, the main thing he related me is, this is what dads and daughters do. This is a normal thing. This is what happens. Now, there's still a thing in my head where I don't know if it's from the abuse, where I'm wondering maybe if that's true. And I go through that and I wonder, if this is something normal, please tell me. Do all biological fathers and daughters sleep together? And this is something that I literally wonder in my heart. And it's something I'm wondering. Like, is it a secret or is it something? And that's something that I actually wonder still to this day because of that.
That's not normal.
That's what people say, I just wonder, like, deep down, I'm like, the paranoia, I'm kind of like, are they lying to me? Because of the abuse is so deep, the roots are so deep. But he wasn't my biological father. It doesn't make it any better. I believed him to be, and I was like, okay, this is my dad. But the main thing he instilled is, fathers and daughters do this. This is what they do. They have sex. And he literally tied me down and literally had sex with me when I was 4 years old. I mean, he literally ripped me open. Literally. When you talk about a 4-year-old, you hear stories of molestation and things, but actually, an actual rape, I don't know why they don't talk about that. They act like it's not possible, and it is. And so he gave me this little mermaid necklace afterwards, and I remember feeling like really confused and hurt. I knew it hurt bad, and I knew I didn't like it, but still at the same time, it was messed up. I mean, it was kind of like comforting to me too, which was really weird. And I think that's a guilt, and that's something weird that people, especially women, go through because the psychological roots are so deep. And I was so happy to be not with the Palestinians anymore. I was so happy to not be Jewish anymore. My father, he had blue eyes and dark black hair. I don't know what he was, but I know he wasn't Jewish. And I know that, and my new title was that I wasn't Jewish anymore. And I feel a betrayal now, a little bit about it, but back then it was just a freedom to not be Jewish. So he gave me that necklace, and my mother, I don't know if she, looking back, I feel that she maybe actually possibly didn't know what was going on, but a lot of people have various beliefs about what they feel about that, if that was the case or not. Being that she got me ready, and I don't like talking bad about my mother, but she's not really my mother, so that kind of makes me feel a little better about it. But I was dealing with this from the ages of 4. I mean, this was a constant thing until one day he told me not to show my mother the Little Mermaid necklace that I had. And I asked him why. And he said, because it will cause a lot of problems and it'll get me and you hurt and I'll have to leave. I remember after one of the things of abuse, this was where he strangled me, basically covered my mouth while he was penetrating me. This was when I was like 6 probably. And he caused me to pass out. And literally, I believed that I was dead. I went through the light that you talk about, and I remember this. And there was a man there. He had longish hair about to here. His face wasn't showing. He was really tall. His face was like golden. And he had this gigantic vase of water, a beautiful like porcelain vase. He said to me, "You are thirsty." And he gave me a drink of the water. And I literally came to and came back to the world. It was the most refreshing water I've ever had in my life. And when I woke up, I was back. It was like I was... Now, there's various beliefs about that, too. You lost, blood flow to your brain, or it was an hallucination. And that's something that my whole life I struggled with, too, thinking. But later on now, seeing more the reality and the fact that I'm able to be here and talk, I know that it was God, and I know that everything happens for a reason now. So I'm hoping that this story maybe hits home for people and women to know, even men, and that you're not alone. And if you feel like you're not normal, I understand that. And being normal, really nobody is, and it's just a matter really of opinion. And no matter what you're going through, like I understand sexual abuse, I understand abuse, and I truly hope that I'm reaching somebody out there.
I think a lot of people have been through things similar to yours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How long did this go on?
Okay, so I was there until I was 9 years old. So from ages 4 to 9. From that point, the whole cataclysmic end to all of this was basically my mother. I unveiled the necklace to her and she freaked out. Now, I don't remember if she freaked out, exactly what happened. I just remember seeing her get beaten. Horribly. I mean, my mother, and I think she was defending me, if I remember correctly. I believe she was defending me. And I believe she said something, "Don't touch my daughter anymore." I think at this point, my mother had obtained a loving for me through the years. And she and I developed a bond, me and my adopted mother. I viewed her as my mother. And at this point, I didn't even know that she wasn't my real parents. She left that part out, I didn't remember any of it.
So you don't think she knew anything about what was going on with the guy?
At this point, now that at the very end, when I seen how she got beaten, no, I don't. Some people think different things, but I know if she did know something at the beginning, she no longer was okay with it, and she felt horrible about it. And I can tell you that. And I don't believe that she knew, but still, only God knows the truth at this point. I can't say 100% as much as I'd like to say that she did, but I can say that she regretted it if she did, and that she got beaten severely for it, and she began to love me, and she was regretful of everything that had happened, and I know that in my heart. He beat her up, and then this time he saved me from the abuse, but he tied us up together in the closet, and he said, "I'm leaving." And I remember trying to bust out, and I was so sad because I was saying, my father, and I was sad when he left. I blamed my mother. I blamed her. And you took my dad away from me. And I was devastated when he left. I felt so used.
A lot of crazy emotions you were dealing with.
Yeah. And yeah, big time.
Because you developed an attachment to him?
I developed an attachment to him that was sick, that was pretty... I thought he was my real father. I thought he was my real biological father.
Did you have friends?
At this point, I was not even going to school. We were so poor at that time, and I wasn't even known in any of the schools. I went to basically just, I was at home, or I went to a daycare nearby, a really ringy-dingy one. And I mean, they ended up pulling me out of it because I was so strange in that my behaviors in that care, trying to, do sexual things with the boys there and kiss them and things like that. And my behaviors were so bizarre to them that they ended up not allowing me there. And I really became like a secret, it's controversial. Only someone who was an adult at the time looking in could have really told me how that situation really went, as far as how that was allowed to take place. I remember calling the police several times, and I remember when they would show up and my mother wasn't there. One time I was just home alone, and I remember they were really confused as why I was there alone. And my adopted mother came in at that time, and it was just when I was about to tell them something about my father, too. And she goes, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And she goes, "Madison," because that's my name, "Madison, why did you do this?" And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mommy, I'm sorry. I just wanted my parents to love me, dude. I just wanted them to love me, I was so hungry for love and acceptance, as all children are, And even if our parents are monsters, we always seek their love, and because it's all we know. It's what we're given at first, and that's when, at that point, when those things aren't there, I find people who don't have parents to be truly blessed individuals that are. In my eyes, it's almost in a way, pardon if I offend anyone, but almost a curse almost to have beautiful, perfect parents, because at this point, when you have this beautiful, perfect thing, you don't need who created us. You don't need him, or you don't call to him so much. So it's almost like a gift, if you can view it as a gift. Like I have, that's a better way to look at it.
So you feel like God helped you?
Yeah, I feel like at this point, the message that I received from God when now being an adult, I'm 34 years old now, is that wasn't my real father. Not even the man who seed I'm from. He's not even my real father. God is the real father, and that's our Father. And I think if I really remembered before coming to the earth, that would have been something God would have said to me, is you're going to go through a lot, but all of it's because I love you and I need you, and I want that bond with you. So endure these things, and you can have that, and so that's how I feel about that, All
right, so back to your story.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So you were roughly around, what, 9 or 10 at this point?
Yeah, 9 years old. 9 years old. Okay, so at this point, my mother and that dude took off. That dude took out like a bat out of hell, he came into some money, of course, and he went on his merry way, I do kind of wonder about the pictures he took of me, and maybe if that had something to do with the money, but I'll never really know. You know, I do have some pictures, I failed to mention there, pictures that he took too that might have had something to do with the income, but I'm not 100% sure. But on that note, I ended up getting, so my mother went to the law, okay, and a lawyer. She had some kind of, I don't know what problem she had or some kind of, but she went to a family law lawyer. Okay, and I think it had something to do with dude trying to get maybe some kind of custody on me, or her trying to do something with me. She wanted to do something with me. And the attorney that she had met, it was a man who I yelled my last name from, and he was a man who was wealthy, and he was an attorney. And at this point, he adopted me, and him and my mother fell in love. And he adopted me as his real daughter. And that for me was nice, but the damage was done. You know, at this point, I was diagnosed. I was having to see a lot of psychiatrists, psychologists, because my behavior, and it's messed up because I didn't really understand why my dissociative disorder, at this point I had caused a way to block off all of this in my head. I mean, I had a fantasy world, you know, but the nightmares were constant, you know. I could barely sleep. I slept with one eye open, you know, but I developed a fantasy world. And this is where I just would go into that world, and I would start talking to myself, and I'd just make how my day was going to go, and I'd start talking to things that weren't around and try to envelope it and just make it a real world that I was in. And in this real world, it was something like The Truman Show. And my thing was, I'm in a movie, and everyone's watching me, and the whole world is watching me, and I'm in a movie, and this world isn't really real, and it's all just a movie. So if I can just entertain it and just know that everyone in it's an actor, then it takes away the pain, or whatever they're doing, it can't hurt me because it's just a movie. No big deal. So that's how I went about it, you know.
You're not going to school?
Pardon?
You weren't going to school?
No. Now, at this point, because of the marriage to the attorney, I was now in school. I went to, I enrolled in school. We came to Mission Viejo, California. Boom, all of a sudden we have money. And I'm like, whoa, you know. And I was spoiled, but I was spoiled at this point. You know, I had everything, you know, that a kid could want. I had a room line, I had my own fancy bedding, my own room, you know, a big nice house. But I struggled with a lot of psychological things. I cutted myself. You know, I wasn't happy, man. I would have expected to be happy, you know. And my father, you know, my adopted father, he truly took me on and truly spoiled me. But he was a man, you know, he didn't know anything about really love from parents, you know, because he didn't have one himself. And his parents left him high up and dry and left a note and was like, fend for yourself, literally. So he was like, what the hell? And his parents took off on him when he was like 8 years old. But, you know, he was providing for me. And so that was something that was like, wow, you know. But this man never touched me. He never did nothing like that. And for that later on, I know it should be something normal, but I thank him for that. And I feel bad the way I kind of was to him later on. But I appreciate him very much. And if you're watching this, Jeffrey, I'm sorry for the way I left things between us at the end when I said you weren't my real father, because on earth you were my father. You were everything that a father should be. And I thank you for that very much. And I apologize. So at this point, I was like 9, 10. I went to a nice 5th grade. I was nice. I was pretty normal. At this point, I made some friends, and I was kind of the most normal that I would say I could ever be in my life. That probably is the most normal I'll ever was or ever will be. So I went to school and everything was gravy. I remember, I wasn't so popular. I was nerdy. I was tall and awkward, and I had these little like bee stings. And I was just like, I didn't fit into the OC thing very well. I said y'all. I had now developed a Southern accent. They made fun of me horribly for it, but this was, basic kid things, Now, when I hit the 6th grade and I went to middle school, that's when my behaviors kind of were like, whoa, a little controversial. I started to, naturally hang out with older men, much older men. I think one of my first boyfriends that I had was like 35, and I was like 13, or no, was I like 13? Actually, this was, about 13. And he came to the door with flowers. I lied to him and told him I was 18. I don't think this dude actually thought I was 18. I don't know, but my mother was like, she is only 13 years old. And I was like, no, I hate you. I screamed. I was like, I love him. Freaking out. I was just really, really, I was looking for that thing with my father again. Bizarre, but things end up happening for a reason, I guess, everything. But I was bizarre behaviors, cutting myself and just dating, and very overtly sexual. I mean, and this was perceived by my mother as a bad thing. She found a list that I had made, I don't know how I'm going to word this, of oral sex, we'll say that. I made a list and compiled a list of all the boys that I'd performed oral sex with up on the hill right outside of our house. It was reaching 15, 20. My mother found this and she was like, okay, it's time for more therapy. You need more therapy. So I was on Adderalls, I was on Ritalin, I was on Xanaxes, I was on schizophrenic medication. I mean, I was on all kinds of pills, I was on everything, dude. I mean, she was trying to compensate, I guess, for everything that had happened. I was hopped up. I mean, I was high, quite frankly, I was high. And this is kind of when, at this time that I started to smoke marijuana and things like that, to heal, I guess, the pain that I had. Okay. Ultimately, we had quite a disaster happen. My mother and she'd gotten pregnant. My family had gotten pregnant, basically, and decided they're having a new daughter. And so when this new daughter come, I was not very happy. I threw her out a window. I threw my little sister out of a 2nd-story window.
How old was she?
She was like 2. I threw her out of a window.
And?
I mean, and the story was that they were swinging on the blinds. No, I threw her out of a window.
Did she survive?
She survived. I threw her out of a window. And now, this is when I was kind of like, okay, I just wanted her to die, quite frankly, because she was something new. She was coming in my place, and it was like, so these behaviors were getting kind of bad. I mean, that was like, I was like, 16 years old, 17 years old. That's kind of like, okay, so now I'm getting volatile, So at this point, I ended up leaving the house. I ended up, basically, my stepfather was like, dude, you gotta go. I mean, I was 17 years old, but he was like, you just tried to kill your sister. You gotta go, dude. And my mom was just kind of like, so I ended up leaving. And at this point, this is when I go into my thing of I moved to Florida. I got a little boyfriend in Orange County. I moved to Florida, and this is where it all stemmed. After this one cataclysmic event, like this is when my life kind of just went down pretty much. I ended up getting pregnant, and when I was 19 years old, I was alone, and I ended up getting pregnant by a man, and he was like 28 or something. We got a place together, but he didn't want the daughter. He didn't want the pregnancy at all. And now looking back, it hurts because right now, I'm 34. I would love to experience pregnancy again, but I'm not having that luck right now. And I was about, 19 years old, and I had a daughter. I ended up doing a closed adoption, and I ended up giving her away. Because I was so fearful. At this point, I smoked marijuana, but I started to do cocaine. And during the pregnancy, I had done pretty good. I stopped, but I still kind of smoked weed. And I noticed that I think I did cocaine a couple times. So at this point, I'm like, I don't think I can do this. I don't want this little girl to go through what I went through. So I found a family, and I ended up doing a closed adoption. And I just remember the hospital being devastated. I couldn't even bond with her or look at her, but, So that was, after that moment, that's when I just shut down. At this point, I started smoking crystal meth, really, got really, really bad on that, to the point where I was just kind of out there. And this is when I ended up in Florida. I ran into somebody, and I ended up actually getting trafficked. There was a job for a studio, and I ended up getting a webcam studio to go in and you just, perform on yourself. And then basically I ended up getting trafficked when I arrived there. And at this point, I was literally thrown into the back of a car, and at this point, for safety purposes, I can't divulge what group this was, but I ended up coming back to California, and I ended up basically they shaved my head, and I ended up pretty much in my own room, and at all times throughout the day they were making a lot of drugs and things like that, and I was always giving them through IV or through just smoking. And at this point, I was a full-on sex slave. I wasn't allowed to leave. I was starved. I was at this point, I'm a full-on sex slave. I'm saying like 30 to 50 men a day. I was bad. This is when they introduced me to heroin, and it's just things. At this point, I have no say. I have no phone. I just submitted myself to what basically I told myself, and looking back, my father always told me that I was. And I pretty much accepted that fate. And at this point, it kind of became normal for me.
How long did this go on?
I was involved in this from the ages of 19 to, quite honestly, I've been here now for about 4 years. Quite honestly, when I showed up here...
So for years?
Yeah, it was 4 years ago I came here. That's when it stopped. When I came to LA, I was freed. So
and
19...
What about STDs?
Oh, yeah, naturally, yeah, I got pretty lucky there, honestly. I got a syphilis, I got cured of that. I ended up not getting any STDs. That's pretty surprising.
You're using protection?
I think that they did quite a bit, but I know there were times that they didn't, too. I know also, too, that I didn't even know what was blue from gray at that point, or black from green, or, I didn't even know what they were doing. At this point, I'm just fully tapped out, fully involved in this drug-induced zone, and in this sex craze zone. Like, I began to just become, in my opinion, a sex addict almost, because it was my way of freeing all the pain from me, you know. And women receive a lot of judgment for that a lot of times, but in the end, it actually can be, if you look at it the right way, it can kind of be freeing to an extent if you accept it. If you just accept what's going on in your life and try to understand the purpose for it, you know. But when I came here, it was honestly a situation where somebody had came in, and I got brought here literally with guns, and I literally got brought here with two men that came in, and they basically grabbed me and they kidnapped me, and I thought they had plans to hurt me, and they had worked with this group, so they were trusted, and they took off with me in the car, and they go, "We're going to San Diego, you want to go?" And I go, "Hell yeah, dude." And so I jumped in the car, you know, and lo and behold, I get to San Diego, and one dude shoots the other dude in the car, literally. And I'm screaming, like, what's going on? But then I realized, like, Madison, this is, like, how you're going to get out of here, dude. And I just took off, and it was over there on Mirrorless in San Diego. And I'd never even been there before.
So that was your escape route?
That was my escape, dude. That was my escape. And now, you know, I found out, you know.
Were there other women that were involved in what you were?
Oh my God, dude. I don't know how I survived that alone or how I got out of their life, but I saw so many people die. I saw so many women die. I saw so many women overdose. I seen them killed in front of me. I mean, I seen bad things, you know. I seen baby bottles with heroin in them. You know, I seen messed up things there. I seen clothes, blood on them, you know.
You were there for roughly like 5-6 years, something like that?
I was there from 19 to 24 years. I'm 34 now, so 30 years old.
So for 10 years almost?
Yeah.
How many women, roughly, ballpark?
There were a lot. A lot of them women that it's messed up, and I'm hoping I don't get in trouble for this somewhere online. But if I do, I be happy that I said something. A lot of the women that they say are being killed aren't. They get brought into the sex trade. They're not killed. They're still alive.
And there are American women?
Women from all over, dude.
All over.
But the biggest surprise is the amount of women that I seen. It seems like with the group that I was in, is white women. A lot of white women. A lot. There were women of all races, but it seemed like the ones that were being brought into this sex trade the most here is honestly American white women that are walking around, and nobody talks about it like as much.
And the drugs are what keep them.
Yeah, the drugs. And a lot of times these families, they assume that they're dead. For me, I know right at this point, my mother, I'm pretty sure she thinks I'm dead. I haven't spoken to her in years.
How long ago was it that you were brought to San Diego?
I've been here about 4 years now. Yeah, I think, because I'm 34. But actually, it's almost been about 5 because I'm turning 35 here in June.
So you were...
And my mother didn't talk to me that whole time.
For 10 years?
At all. No word.
And you're housed there? They give you a place to sleep?
Yeah, I lived there.
And they feed you and they...
Yeah, they feed me. And most of the times it would be the men that would come in, that they would have food that they would give me. And then they began to kind of like, it became like almost like a favoritism weird thing where, like, honestly, when I left, it was almost like they're not going to come look for me because, in their opinion, I paid my dues. They know that I'm not going to say anything about who they are. They know that I'm not going to do that. They know that even if I did, chances are, I mean, you're not going to find them. You know, you're not going to know. I mean, even if I said something, most people think half this stuff I say is a lie anyway. I mean, when I tell people my story, my life story.
That's every video on my channel.
Yeah.
People say, "Oh, are they just making this up?"
Yeah, no. I mean, maybe if we do something a little further, I actually could even probably bring in some proof to some of these things and just back it up a little bit if someone had any question at all. But this is real. It's a
horrific story.
Yeah, it's real life. And now I'm in LA.
How long you been here?
About 5 years now, almost 5 years. And dude, I like LA. I'm not doing the best financially. Okay, I'm not really doing too hot, honestly.
Are you using drugs?
Right now, I am. I do use drugs.
What are you using?
I use crystal meth, and honestly, I smoke fentanyl to heal my pain from inside. But I'm starting to kind of get to a thing where I really don't want to do these things anymore. There's alternatives. My medications that I was on when I was a kid, like I'm starting to get where I kind of want life. Like I'm kind of like, it'd be nice to like be married, maybe have a husband, or
you're incredibly strong.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean,
to endure all of this shit for 35 years.
Yeah, dude, and that's where my name.
You have no friends.
Warrior. No, I have. Honestly, I really don't have. I have some friends. Like I stay over in Lincoln Heights is where I was staying. All of them, smoke, and I really want to go talk to them, dude, because I kind of slipped up when I was over there, and I was like, I stay in a tent outside.
Yeah, but you have no family, no friends, no.
Yeah,
support
I don't
system.
really. No,
How do you make money now?
That's the thing. I don't. That's the thing. I'm living basically in front of a church, and I'm living with these people, and I don't have my own home, but they live in RVs, and it's just men, and they just will, I'm pretty much, I'm not doing very good right now. I'm not. I stay in a tent, like I said, outside of this church. My meals are basically, if they come through, the churches will bring food. But honestly, as far as making money, like, I'm not doing too good, I tried prostitution a couple of times. When I do it, I only normally accept like $20-$40 because I'm just like, I'm not a good prostitute. I'm so used to like the sex slavery thing that I feel like almost doing wrong taking money from anybody for that anymore. And I don't want to do those things anymore. My age I'm hitting, I want to be better, and I'm craving for a husband very badly. And
well, I think getting clean from the drugs would be the first step.
Yeah.
Are you open to going to a rehab?
Yeah, I'm totally open. I found one, actually, I found one, and I was thinking about, I actually did call them about 2 days ago, and I'm waiting to hear back from them, but I'm pretty sure that I'm going to do it because, dude,
Yeah, I think that would be the first step.
Yeah.
I see that your mind is still there.
Right?
You're not gone.
No, I'm not. Thank God.
Yeah, it's a miracle.
Yeah, and it is, thank God, it's the only way. I made myself do this, and I struggle with, low self-esteem, I'm embarrassed about my teeth right here. I had crowns and they came out, and it's just financially, I just feel like a butt. I have no money. I have really nothing. I'm here in LA, and I can't just go into a store and buy anything. Like, I'm pretty much totally just like, I'm homeless, and it's hard to be these things and go to the drugs or to sex or to run away, but I hope that I can find something maybe to help, maybe some kind of counseling or some kind of thing to help women who've been through abuse. That's what I'm hoping. Maybe I can get an entry into some kind of occupation or something.
I think helping others is a great way to help yourself.
Right, yeah.
And build your self-esteem and all that kind of stuff.
So,
and I see that your mind is still there, so
yeah.
you'd be a perfect candidate for rehab and for that.
Right, I think so too.
Yeah, I see a lot of hope.
Thank you.
Despite all the terrible things you've been through.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. Thank you. Yeah, and I hope that that I reach somebody out there, and remember me if you go through things, and you just know that, let me be your angel, and let me tell you that you're not alone.
It's a beautiful sentiment. Thank you so much, Madison, for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll stay in touch.
Okay.
All right, John, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of the mountains, that river running wild. I'm as peaceful as a shadow and carefree as a child. The sunlight singing to me a soft and gentle song, singing soak it all in, darling, for you're right where you belong. Right where you belong. Right where you belong. Oh, you've been down in that valley, but came back before too long. Right where you belong. You've been to hell and back again. Nobody knows your story, at least not the full one, 'cause you've learned you can't trust just anyone. Life has dealt some heavy blows, some have made you strong, but you shouldn't have to work so hard to find where you belong. Find where you belong. Find where you belong. Oh, you've been down in that valley, you've been down far too long. Let's find where you belong. Steeple, maybe a state of mind. It may be the furthest thing from what you think you'll find. But listen to that voice inside. inside, it won't guide you wrong. Trust in time, my friend, you'll wind up right where you belong. Right where you belong. Right where you belong. There will still be valleys, but you won't stay too long. For there's a place your heart can heal. There's a place where you can feel you're right where you